probably the number one reason why we don't walk in 100% dominion. And this is related to people, but it's a different angle. This is the challenge of agreements. And agreements hit on so many levels of the things we've already talked about, but our agreement impacts our dominion. There are different types of agreements. Agreements are generally between people, one person with the other, but agreements can also be spiritual. So I can make an agreement with God, I can make an agreement with the devil, and I can make an agreement with people. So when it comes to agreements are things that can bind us and things that can bind our dominion. So I'm going to talk about the different levels of agreements, and then I'll talk a little bit more about how these things can take impact in our life. Is that there are different levels of agreement, but the basic first level of an agreement is just an agreement. So if you tell me, Pastor Neville, I like your black shirt, I could come in agreement with you and say, thank you, I like the black shirt as well. So now you and I are in agreement, and that agreement produces some form of unity on whatever level the agreement is on. So basically, when you and I are in agreement, it produces some form of unity. And it could be negative or it could be positive. If you and I are in agreement to have a war with each other, then we will have a war. We'll be unified in combat against each other. If you and I are in agreement with having peace with each other, then we will have friendship and peace with each other because we're unified. So agreement can go both ways, but agreement is basically unity. Higher level agreement is partnership. Partnership is when you and I sign a contract with each other. So for example, if we are coming together, we're not related to each other, but we decide, let's buy some property together so that we can rent it out to people. We're brothers and sisters in the Lord. Let's get together and let's do this. What happens is that we draft an agreement about how we're going to purchase the place. We may even draft an agreement about how we're going to utilize the place. But basically, if something happens, and say we all agree that we're going to all pay a portion of the mortgage, but now time comes and one person doesn't have the money for their mortgage, or one person is not going to pay the mortgage, because of the partnership, our credit is tied into the house. So either all of our credits are going to take a shot because we didn't pay the full price of the mortgage, or somebody's going to come forward, or perhaps if it's depending how many people, or someone within the partnership is going to pay the mortgage, lose the money, but save their credit score, because partnership requires action. Partnership will cost me whatever is in the contract. So partnership can be very dangerous because, for example, if we come into partnership, basically go out and to change our community, and we have a solid partnership that this is something that we're going to do. Only one of us decides to do it, or maybe half of us decides to do it. Now the load that would have been for a greater group falls upon a smaller group, because a partnership basically requires everybody to function, and if everyone doesn't function, it's going to hit somebody else. So when it comes to dominion, where it's difficult with the dominion is that in a partnership, dominion can become stronger because we have come together to take authority. But if only one person or only 5% of the people decide to take authority, there's going to be a limit to the authority that can be taken. And in fact, sometimes you will lose authority because people may look at you or look at your situation and say, you don't have any power. And now you have the haters, you have the ignorant, you have the sinners, you have the religious folk all against you because your partnership didn't work. So partnership is very important because in partnership, everybody needs to make a commitment. Oftentimes partnership is done in writing. Everyone needs to make a commitment. They need to follow through on their commitment. But there's a level of agreement that's even higher than partnership, and that level is called a covenant. So a covenant is not marked by documents. It's not even marked by unity or by you and I talking with each other. A covenant is marked by God. So you can have an agreement without God. You can have a partnership without God, but you can't have a covenant without God. A covenant is an agreement that's made between two or more people, or between one person and God, but it is ratified by God. So when I'm in a covenant with somebody, what happens is whatever blessing is coming on them, it comes on me. Whatever curse is coming on them, it comes on me. If the person decides to believe that they don't have dominion, it's going to weigh on your authority and your dominion because it's a covenant. I need to broaden the idea of covenant because you can have a covenant between a person and Satan. But what happens is that when you have a covenant between a person and Satan, God recognizes it and God allows it to take place. So here's where the difficulty comes in with Christians is if I as a Christian come into covenant or partnership or agreement with a person who is in covenant with the devil, we are already disunified. We're already against one another. So it will have an impact on our dominion. If we as a church come into agreement with each other, there's so much we can get done. If we as a church come together in a partnership, there's so much we can get done. If we come together in covenant, because we already are in covenant with each other, because we are church and we're all in covenant with God. So we're in a covenant with each other. So if we come into agreement in covenant with God, that we will authorize and will live our dominion together, then great things will happen. But it also works the other way around. And I'm going to give you two examples and I'll close. Is if there are a bunch of witches who come into covenant with each other and they lodge an attack against the church, even though we're the children of God, even though we love God, even though we believe in God, if we're not unified, they will have an effect on us. Because us unified together against them will always win because God is working through us. But when you're operating as an individual who's affected by words, who's affected by thoughts, who's affected by their decisions and their actions, and ultimately sin, when a group of evil people covenant together to go against you, they can oftentimes have an impact on you. And that's because God calls us into agreement with each other. He calls us into partnership with each other. He calls us into covenant with each other because these are three things that allow us to be able to walk in authority and walk in dominion on this earth. If I come into covenant with somebody who's in covenant with the devil, oftentimes people do this to deceive you. When you come into covenant with somebody who's in covenant with the devil, or you come into agreement or partnership with someone who's in covenant with the devil, is that it will have an impact, a negative impact on your authority. You'll find that, first of all, if they don't keep their word, you start to get to the place that you don't keep your word. If they don't pray, you'll find that you won't start to pray. If they're confused and depressed and there's all darkness taking over their mind, even though you were never in a place of darkness before you met them, you start to get into a place of darkness. Because when you covenant with darkness, generally darkness doesn't change. Darkness tries to change you.